Hey there nation, welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander CheapSkate, and we are back with another episode of Saga of the 8 Points. This is a series of battle reports that is dedicated to Warhammer Age of Sigmar Warcry, and this is battle report number 7. It is fought between Sister Serial as well as myself. It is a 1,000 point match play battle that is fought between the Dustmen of the Splintered Fang versus my Lords of Azure Skies of the Stormcast Eternals. So we're throwing this down, like I said before, in a match play scenario of 1,000 points. I've been really looking forward to playing against the Splintered Fang. It's actually one of the war bands that are original to the Warcry gaming system, and my friend Sister Serial has decided to use these guys and to dust them off with her Dustmen in order to fight against me into the deeps of the Bloodwind Spoil. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to play some background music real quick. If you want to see exactly what we're bringing for this battle report, go ahead and pause and take a look at your own leisure. So that being said, let's get this battle report on a roll.
Crom, I've never prayed you before. I have no tongue for it. No one, not even you, will remember if we were good men or bad, why we fought, or why we died. No. All that matters is that two stood against many. That's what's important. Balor pleases you, Crom. So grant me one request. Grant me revenge. And if you do not listen, then to hell with you.
Alright, so let's talk about the scenario rules for this battle report. First of all, the deployment on this one is called Escalation, and just in case you're unaware, in the game of Warcry, you do divide up your warband into 3 distinctive deployment groups. Those deployment groups are dagger, shields, as well as hammers. And this battle report, what ends up happening for the deployment is that your units' shield units for both sides of the army will deploy relatively within 60 inches in the center of the battlefield. Your guys' daggers as well as your hammers, however, will deploy later on in the battlefield. In fact, in round 2 is when both your dagger units as well as your hammer units show up onto the battlefield. So that is the deployment scheme we're going with on this one. The victory condition is called Seize Territory, and in this one what ends up happening is that the defender and I, my rival and I, actually roll off these 6 to see who's going to be the attacker and who's going to be the defender. In this case, I end up being the defender on this scenario, and what I have to do is I have to defend 3 objectives that are placed on the table, and Sister Serial's job is to try to seize those territories. This battle ends by the 4th battle round, and the player who controls the most objectives wins the battle on this one. And then finally, for the twist, we have what's called Winds of Rot, and this one's kind of interesting because this one, Grandfather Nurgle has decided to take interest on the battlefield and decided to increase everybody's toughness characteristic by 1 for all fighters for this battle, so it makes it kind of interesting. So with the scenario rules over with, let's go and talk about the battle plan real quick. Alright, so here is an overhead shot of the entirety of the battlefield. As you can see, we're playing in the Bloodwind Spoil on this one, so we're putting in the middle of a blood-wrecked desert. I'm deployed on the near side of the table. My friend Sister Serial is deployed on the far side of the table. And as you can see, my objective here is to defend 3 objective markers. And since I'm the blue deployment on this one, I decided to place my objective markers relatively close to the bottom half of the table. And that's because during round 2, that's when my dagger as well as my hammer elements will be able to deploy. And that way they can run up and secure those 2 objective markers right there. At the same time, I also decided to place another objective marker within the center of the battlefield, relatively speaking, so that way my shield unit can definitely take that one and kind of occupy it as well. Once I occupy those objectives, my plan is to just kind of like weather the storm and fight off the Splintered Fang as best I can. I'm playing Stormcast Eternals, so we do have really high toughness as well as really high wounds. And with the Nurgle's Rot ability, that's basically taking over the battlefield, everyone having +1 to their toughness, I should be able to weather the storm pretty well. And that's pretty much the battle plan I'm going with on this one. So with the battle plan over with, we go directly to the deployment phase. So starting off with deployment for the Stormcast Eternals, my shield unit is located within 8 inches near the center of the table, and that is Samus Stormsight, my Long Strike Raptor, as well as Horus, my Aether Wing. And that pretty much makes up my shield deployment on this one. Coming in on the bottom of my deployment area for my dagger unit, these are my 2 characters, Tullius Virtus as well as Kato Shadowstep. They are both Vanguard Hunters, and they will come in on round 2 during the reserve phase of that battle round. And finally, for my hammer deployment, I have my leader, that's Balian Swiftsteel, as well as Meridian Sunhelm. Those are my 2 Vanguard Hunter as well as Vanguard Hunter Prime, and they'll be coming in round 2 of the reserve phase as well on the left-hand side of my deployment area. So with my deployment over with, we go directly across the table to Sister Serial's deployment on this one. Alright, so in the center of the battlefield is Sister Serial's Dustmen, the Splintered Fang. These guys are her shield deployment. Up in the front, that is Tulok the Primus. He is a pureblood. And right behind him onto the back left-hand corner, that character's name is Raziel. He is a clearbow with a shield. And onto his right-hand side, that is Zephon the Impaler, who's a venom blood with a spear as well as a shield. And that pretty much makes up Sister Serial's shield deployment in the center of the battlefield. On the top of her deployment area in the center, that is her dagger deployment. On the left hand side, that is Duma of the Whispers. He is a serpent collar on this one. In the middle there, that little mound of nurglings, those are supposed to represent serpents. Those are called the Whispering as well, so they're kind of paired together because the serpent collar and the serpents actually do very well together. They actually synergize pretty good for their rules. Right next to on the right hand side, that is Turel. He is a clear blood armed with a shield. And on the right hand side, that guy is Kane, who's also another clear blood, who's also equipped with a shield. And finally, making up her hammer deployment on the right-hand side of her deployment area, that guy in the bottom right there, that is Malkaya, the Corpse Maker. He is a true blood. He is also the warband leader. And right next to him on the top of there, that is Rahab the Flayer. He is a venom blood who's armed with a barbed whip. And that pretty much makes up the deployment for the Dustmen on this one. So with deployment over with, my friend and sister Sarah and I go directly to the top of turn number 1, and we roll off for the priority phase to see who goes first. Alright, so that takes us directly to the top of turn number 1 for the Stormcast Eternals, and as you can see in this one, I managed to get the initiative on this one for priority because I had 2 singles. Now my friend Sister Sarah, she has a triple, which is valued at 6, and 2 doubles, one at 1, and the other one at 5. On the other hand, got a triple of 3s, as well as a pair of 5s, and so I'll be able to use those for ability dice later on. So with the priority phase over with, we skip the reserve phase, and we go directly to the combat phase. So for my very first activation, I of course activate Samus, is what I'm doing. Samus Starsight moves up his normal moon allowance to the top of that rune temple there, so that way he can secure the objective in the middle of the battlefield. I then decide to use one of my ability dice to give additional attacks for his range attack, because I won't be able to attack twice because I moved for one of my actions. So because he gets 2 shots with his long strike crossbow, I aim it directly into Tulok the Primus, which is the pure blood across the battlefield. Now unfortunately for me though, only one of my shots managed to wound, and the reason why is because of that dang Wind of Rot ability that's giving everyone +1 toughness, makes that Tulok the Primus actually have a toughness of 5. My long strike crossbow also has a strength of 5 as well, so I wound him to 4 up. It was basically 50-50 shot, only made it with 1 hit, and only caused a normal 4 wounds. I didn't get a critical hit on that part. So not as amazing as I usually do, but you know, them's a break on this scenario. So in response to this, Cyril then activates Tulok the Primus. He's the pure blood. He decides to use his normal moon allowance to move to the top of the ruins as well to secure the very first objective marker on the far left-hand side of the battlefield. He also pops a triple there in order to make sure he gets respite, so that way he heals completely. So because that, Sister Serial heals up her true blood, or pure blood on this one, and that makes up Sister Serial's activation on the left-hand side. Meanwhile, I then activate Horus, my Aether Wing. I actually have him spend a double movement moving towards the objective marker on the far bottom right hand side of the table, so that way I now control 2 objective markers. And meanwhile, Sister Sarah, she then activates her other 2 characters, her 2 fighters, her 2 clearbloods actually. That's Raziel as well as the Venom Blood Zephon the Impaler, who's armed with a spear and shield, and she actually uses the ability dice using pairs for both of them, where they can actually add +1 to the movement, so that way they can actually go movement 5 in total. So she does double moves with both of them. They go flying across the battlefield 10 inches and give within a couple inches of that objective part as well, as she's sending her forces forward in order to secure that center objective. And that pretty much makes up the activations for the combat phase. So here's the end of turn number 1, overhead shot of the battlefield. As you can see, I currently hold 2 objectives, both of them on the far right hand side with Horus as well as Samus Stormsight, while Sister Serial managed to control the other objective on the left hand side with Tulok the Primus, who's holding down objective marker number 3. And that pretty much ends up this one. So with turn number 1 over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 2, and Sister Serial and I roll off in priority to see who'll go first. Alright, so that takes us directly to the top of turn number 2 for the Splintered Fang. So the Dustman will be going first on this one. For her ability dice, she earned a triple, which is valued at 6, and I earned a quad, which is valued at 2, which is really good because I could definitely use that to help out my long strike Raptor for the most part. I ended up with 3 singles, and Sister Serial also ended up with 3 singles, but she used one of her wild dice to secure the initiative, and I really wanted that quad, and I used my other wild dice to make sure I got that quad of 2. And so with the priority phase over with, we go directly to the reserve phase, because this is when all of our dagger and hammer units come onto the battlefield. So on the top of the battlefield, Sister Serial's dagger unit first pops up. That is Duma of the Whispers, her serpent collar, as well as the serpent the Whispering. She also brings up 2 more of her clear bloods, that is Turel and as well as Kane. So they're occupying the top center of her deployment area. Sister Serial also brings in Malkaya the Corpse Maker, her true blood leader, as well as what's his name, Rahab the Flayer, which is her venom blood who's armed with a barbed whip. And they come over to the far right hand side of her deployment area as well for her hammer units. And so that makes up her reserve phase for this turn. At the same time, I also bring in my hammer unit as well. That's my leader Belian Swiftsteel, my hunter Primus, as well as Meridian Sunhelm, my other hunter. And they both come in on the bottom left hand corner of the battlefield. Meanwhile, on the far right-hand corner of the battlefield, on the bottom half of it, my other two members of my little warband that represent for my dagger units, that is Kato's Shadowstep as well as Tullius Vertus, they both also pop up in the bottom right-hand corner, so that way they can start taking advantage and start fighting as well. So with the reserves phase over with, we go directly to the combat phase, starting off with the Splintered Fang. So right off the bat, Sister activates Melchiah, the Corpse Maker, who then uses a triple ability to trigger off the Inspiring Presence ability, and what that does, that also gives bonus activations to all fighters within 6 inches of the leader. So because of that, both Melchiah, the Corpse Maker, as well as Rahab the Flayer, they will both be able to do actions this turn. And so for her, all she was really doing is basically just the double actions of movement. She thought she actually might get within range in order to engage Samus Stormsight on the top of the runes there, but unfortunately she was just a couple of inches shy of securing that objective. So because of that, as you can see in this photo, both Rahab the Flayer as well as Melchiah the Corpse Maker, they just move across the battlefield directly behind that rune, and they start setting up themselves for an attack directly into Samus Stormsight. In response, I then activate Stormsight, and I decided to use the quad ability off on that Long Strike Raptor, the Aim Strike ability. And what that does, that takes the ability value of the quad and add it to both normal attacks as well as critical attacks. I fired 2 times directly at the 2-lock the Primus, managed to atomize that guy right off the table. I think I managed to get a critical shot as well as a normal shot, hitting him both times, so that was enough to finally just finish off that guy. So that kind of frees up that ejector mark on the far left-hand side of the table, and you can probably guess I'm going to send Balian Swiss Steel as well as Meridia's Sunhelm directly towards that objective and try to secure it as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, in the center of the table, next to the ejector marker near the bottom center of the deployment area, this one is actually several photos several activations taken in one photo. Pretty much what ended up happening in the end is that Citrus Serial assaulted forward with both Zephon the Impaler as well as Raziel, her clear blow with shield, and they basically killed off Horus when it was all said and done. I did try to course a counterattack, of course, with my characters. I think Horus only managed to put 1 wound directly onto Raziel, the clear blow with the shield, so that part was kind of nice. However, Horus did get killed. I then also moved up and I also fought with both Kato's Shadowstep as well as Tullius Vertus. Unfortunately for me, though, I wasn't able to get off any wounds, though, on these guys, so they're all pretty much standing their ground for the most part. And the reason why is because of that Rot Wind ability, giving all these guys +1 for their toughness. And this one is especially true, especially for Zephon the Impaler. He's the Venom Blow with Spear as well as Shield. He's toughness 5 as standard, so when he gets the Wind of Rot ability, he actually has a toughness of 6, which means I have to wound this guy in 5s in order to cause any problems, which is actually kind of a rarity for Stormcast Eternal, because most of the time I've actually been outclassing my opponents in terms of strength versus toughness, but this is the only time where this is actually the opposite effect. So these guys, these Splintered Fang, man, they're pretty dangerous right now. Meanwhile, across the tabletop, Sister Serial then activates the Whispering, her serpents, who do a double movement, so they fly right across the battlefield at 12 inches, heading towards the ejector marker on the far left-hand side of the table. And so we go directly to this next photo, which is actually several activations all kind of coming together. What ended up happening for the most part is that I actually sent up Meridian's Sunhelm directly to the top of the ruins. I spent double actions of moving him forward in order to do that. I also spent double actions on Balian Swift Steel, my leader. And instead of climbing up on the ruins to secure the objective, I decided to kind of move him forward to start taking the offensive. And he actually opens up this crossbow directly into Duma the Whispers, which is Sister Serial's Serpent Collar. He moves up a double action as well, so that way he can give bonuses directly to the Serpents. Managed to put 3 wounds on that guy with my crossbow, so that part's kind of cool. Now this guy does have, of course, 15 wounds, so Doom the Whisperer still has quite a way to go, and he's also toughness 5 because of the Rot Wind ability, so that part was kind of demoralizing. For the rest of the turn, it's all Sister Serial's activations, and all she really does is sends Terrell as well as Kane moving up right behind Duma the Whisperers to provide him some support, and she spends both double actions moving those guys forward. And that pretty much makes up turn number 2 for this battle round. So here's an overhead shot of the entirety of the battlefield at the end of turn number 2, and you can kind of see how things are kind of going overall in terms of the battle. As you can see, Sister Serial is fighting extremely hard in order to secure the objective on the bottom of the screen, taking on both Kato's Shadowstep as well as Tullius Vertus on with her Clear Blood as well as her Venom Blood as well. And that Venom Blood with the Spear and Shield, Zephon the Impaler, that guy is pretty tough. I wasn't expecting to be as tough as he is right now. At the same time, Sister is also trying to assault the ejector marker that is held by Samus Stormsight by sending both Melchiah the Corpse Maker as well as Rahab the Flayer, heading directly to that objective. And I'm kind of worried about that one because if I don't get the priority for the next phase, I won't be able to stop those guys. Hopefully I can shoot them off the table with my crossbow and then occupy the other fighter for the rest of the turn in close combat. But at the same time, like I said, it's kind of risky. It just kind of depends whether I get priority or not. At the same time, on the far left-hand side of the battlefield, I am sitting in Meridia's Sunhelm to secure that eject on the far left-hand side, and Sister Serial is doing exactly the same thing, sending her Serpents forward from the Whispering. At the same time, she's also assaulting with a 3-man fighting team, which is Duma of the Whispers, as well as Turel and Kane, her 2 Clearbloods, and I'm sending in Bailey and Swiftstide to intercept. And that pretty much makes up turn number 2 on this one. So with turn number 2 over with, we go directly to the top, turn 3, and Sister Sarah and I roll off for priority to see who goes first. Alright, so that takes us directly to the top of turn 3, and the Stormcast Eternals managed to get the initiative on this one. I had 3 singles, using one of my wild dice to do that. I also ended up with 2 pairs. I got a pair of 1s as well as a pair of 6s. Now, Sister Sarah, she decided to use her additional wild dice in order to secure herself a triple, so she has triple 5s as well as double 2s, and she has 2 singles, of course, netting me the initiative on this one. So with the priority phase over with, we skip the reserve phase because there's no more reserve units coming onto the table, and we go directly to the combat phase. Alright, so in the end I managed to activate first. The first thing I do, of course, is I open up with Samus Stormsight, and unluckily for me though, I did manage to get a critical hit off, but my second hit was ineffective in order to cause any wounds, and the reason why is because of that cursed Rotwind ability, Makai the Corpse Maker. Usually that True Blood has a toughness of 4, but because of that twist ability, he's actually got a toughness of 5, which means I have to wound him on a 4-up with my long strike crossbow. So like I said, the first one didn't make it because I failed the wound. The second one, however, which was the critical hit one, actually put 10 wounds onto him, so that's kind of nice because now Makai the Corpse Maker is about halfway dead. That True Blood is only carrying 10 points worth of wounds. The only problem though is that both Malkaya the Corpse Maker as well as Rahab the Flayer, they are still both very much alive, and they can cause me all kinds of pain if they decide to charge forward and to attack Samus Stormsight. Meanwhile, across the battlefield, Sister Cheryl then activates the Whispering, her Serpents, and actually has them move up a normal movement allowance, and then she puts a reserve icon right next to him to put him on Overwatch to have him waiting, and I think she's doing that so just in case if I do send in my character Meridia's Sunhelm, the Whispers will be able to fight back and actually attack against me. In the end though, it didn't do really much good because I do send in Meridian Sunhelm and I finish off those Serpents no problem with close combat attacks from my axe, destroying her Serpents in the process and at the same time securing that objective marker for myself. So meanwhile on the right hand side of the battlefield, this is exactly what it looks like on the right hand side. Now I will tell you guys now, we did make an error on this one for the rules. The problem was that I activated Samus Stormsight one more time to counterattack against it. I know you're not supposed to do that because I already spent both of my actions already shooting my crossbow already, but like I said, in the heat of the moment we just kind of forgot the rules in this part, so I do apologize for those of you who are noticing the rules error that is being made. However, when you see the result of what happened here, you're probably not going to complain because not much really happened in terms of combat on that one. So what ended up happening is that Sister Sarah then activated both Rahab the Flayer as well as Malkaya the Corpse Maker. They both spent actions climbing up the ruins to get directly next to Samus Stormsight, and they also used both their actions in order to counterattack against him. In the end though, I do manage to survive quite a bit actually. I only managed to take 2 wounds when it's all said and done. And the crazy part about this whole combat is that Sister Sarah also activated Rahab the Flayer at the same time, using one of her triple 5s in order to activate the Inspiring Presence ability. So I got off really lucky considering I was attacked by both those characters, only taking 2 wounds from my troubles. So like I said before, I do activate with Samus Stormstrike again to counterattack. I do apologize because we made a mistake on those rules. So I do a double attack. I use a double 1s in order to make sure that Samus Stormstrike has an additional attack with his fists. And the only thing I managed to do is actually put 1 wound directly onto Malkaya the Corpse Maker. So like I said, we made that mistake before, but like I said, not much really came out of that. The rules mistake. Meanwhile, across the table over here on the bottom side where the objective is located at, there have been several activations taking place in this one photo, so we'll go ahead and talk about exactly what ended up happening. First of all, when it's all said and done, Sister Sarah decides to pop her double 2s in order to secure the Venomous Poisoned Weapons ability, and that ability is super powerful for the Splintered Fang. What it does is that it acts during the fighter's activation, all their attacks, their strength counts as 1 point higher than your opponent's toughness. So let me say that again, 1 point higher than your toughness. So all of my Stormcast Eternals are toughness 5, which means that all of her attacks are now strength 6, which means at worst she wounds me at 3 up no matter what the situation is. Like I said, very, very powerful ability, especially if you're going up against high toughness armies. In response, I do also activate Kato's Shadow Step. I do give him a double 6s so that way he can do an additional attack in close combat, and this is where pretty much lays out what ends up happening. So for the most part, I actually do pretty well against them. I actually caused only 1 wound, however, directly putting on Zephon the Impaler. That guy is hard to beat because he got that shield, plus with the Nurgle's Rod ability, he's got +1 to his strength. At the same time, though, I managed to put 9 wounds, though, onto Raziel, the Clear Blow with the shield, so he's 1 point away from being killed. In return, however, they managed to put 14 wounds directly onto Kato's Shadow Step. And these are the attacks between Zephon the Impaler, who uses poison attacks to do that, as well as the attacks made by, Raziel as well. I think Raziel managed to get, a couple of wounds on me. It was primarily Zephon the Impaler that actually did the most damage. Now I think about it, I think he did, I think he did 8, he did 10 points of damage to me. That's what he ended up doing to me. And then the other guy, Raziel, managed to put 4, I think, is what he ended up doing. Getting a critical hit as well as a normal hit as well. So that part was just absolutely insane to see the amount of damage that took place over here in the center of the battlefield. Meanwhile, on the left-hand side of the battlefield, mainly ranged combat kind of took place over here on the left-hand side. And this photo is taken after several activations have taken place. So first of all, Sister Serial activates Doom of the Whispers, who spends a double action using her Serpent Strike ability with a range of 8 attack. She actually attacks me twice directly into my character, Balian Swiftsteel. Unfortunately for her, though, she wasn't able to cause any wounds, so I managed to remain out of that unscathed. In response, I decided to use double attacks for Balian Swiftsteel, opening up with his crossbow directly into Doomoth the Whispers, and managed to put 10 wounds on that guy, so he's only about 5 more away from being killed, so that part's kind of nice. And since that was the end of my fighters, the rest of the activation went directly to Sister Serial. In exchange, she did activate Terrell as well as Kane. Both those characters moved up forward to engage my character, spending 1 action to do so, and they spent the rest of their actions attacking directly into Balian Swiftsteel. Managed to put 3 wounds on it when it was all said and done. I think one of them was from a critical hit, and the rest were just, bounced off his armor. So, not much damage in terms, because, I'm not really too worried. Balian Swiftsteel does have 30 wounds, and these guys only have 10, so I'm kind of liking my odds at this point. So with the attack with Kane and Terrell being finished against Balian Swiftsteel, that pretty much brings the end of the turn. Alright, so here's an overhead shot of the battlefield at the end of turn number 3. As you can see, there's a lot of combat taking place on this table. A lot of combat taking place between the 2 objective markers on the right hand side. We got Malkaya the Corpse Maker as well as Rabahab the Flayer trying to fight against Samus Stormsight in order to secure that objective. At the same time, the battlefield there, you got Zephon the Impaler as well as Raziel taking both Kato's Shadow Step as well as Tullia's Virtus in order to secure the objective right there in the center of the battlefield. And on the far left-hand side, I'm pretty much in line in order to secure the objective on the left-hand side, but Balian Swiftsteel, though, is taking out both Terrell as well as Kane and also putting some pressure onto Duma of the Whispers. And of course, Meridian Sunhelm is in a good position there in order to secure that objective marker on the left-hand side. So with the end of turn number 3, we go directly to the top of turn number 4, and Sister Sarah and I roll off for initiative to see who goes first. Alright, so that takes us directly to the top of turn number 4, and the Stormcast Eternals managed to get the initiative on this one as well. In the end, I managed to get a pair of 4s, and Sister Sarah was able to get a pair of 2s, and of course, we both had 4 singles. We both used our wild dice in order to secure the singles, and netting us another tie again. So of course, with this one, we had to roll off. She rolled a 2, I rolled a 4, so because I managed to get the initiative on this one. So with the priority phase over with, we skip the reserve phase because there's no more reserves, and we go directly into the combat phase. So in the combat phase, you start up here next to objective marker in the center of the table, and this one is taken after several activations. So when it was all said and done, the first thing I do is I do manage to take out the Clear Blood Raziel. Manage to finish him off attacks with attacks from Tullia's Virtus, able to do that for his first action. And then of course my second action of attacks, I directly into Zephon the Impaler, and I think I managed to put a wound on that guy when it was all said and done. Meanwhile, Zephon the Impaler pops a double ability, once again getting poisoned weapons, giving him 1 strength higher than my toughness, and with all of his attacks is able to finish off and kill Kato's Shadow Step. So because of that, I lose one of my my hunters on this one, so I lost a Vanguard Hunter right off the bat, so that part was kind of sad. Meanwhile, combat between Samus Stormsight as well as Malkaya the Corpse Maker did not go very well. I once again spend a double ability to get him a +1 to his attack for his fists. And as you can see in this photo, I didn't do anything against that guy. Malkaya the Corpse Maker has a toughness of 5 in this battle because of that Nurgle's Rod to Wind ability that's going off, and Samus's attack is only a strength 4, so I have to hit him at 5s or better in order to wound him. I wasn't able to do so, even with the additional attack from the ability dice. However, Malkaya, though, was able to put the hurting on me, managed to bring up my wound counters all the way up to 9, managed to give me 6 more wounds, which is actually pretty atrocious for me, so that part was kind of sad as well. And so that pretty much makes it the activation over here next to objective marker number 2. And then Sister Serial then also activates Rahab the Flayer, who then also directs his attacks directly into Samus Stormsight, managed to bring up his grand total of wounds up to 14 wounds. So that part's kind of rough too, because Samus Stormsight only has 20 wounds to his name, and he's about 6 wounds away from being killed. So, and then I'll lose that objective, of course, if he also gets killed. So that part was kind of sad. Meanwhile, on the left-hand deployment of the table, I do activate my character, Meridian Sunhelm, who then moves up forward to secure that objective. He also spends his second action to open fire with his crossbow directly into Doom of the Whispers, and my shots are ineffective. None of them actually cause any wounds, so that part was kind of sad. And apparently Sister Serial took offense to being shot at with a crossbow, so then she activated Doom of the Whispers, who directs 2 Super Strike attacks directly into Meridia's Sunhelm. The attacks were largely ineffective, only managed to put 1 additional wound onto that character, so that was all the attacks that she got from her Serpent Collar at this point. So finally on the far left hand side, this photo is taken after several activations between Bailey and Swiftsteel fighting against Kane as well as Terrell. When it was all said and done, I was able to put 6 wounds directly onto Terrell, that clear blood with his shield, so that part was kind of nice. However, the attacks between those 2 clear bloods directly into Bailey and Swiftsteel was able to put 7 wounds on me in total. And that pretty much makes up the action that took place in the combat phase on this one. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, that takes directly to the end of turn number 4. So here's an overhead shot of the entirety of the battlefield, so that way you can see exactly what's going on. And of course, this also brings us to the end directly of our scenario as well, because this battle report ends at turn number 4, and whoever has the most objectives wins. So I do control 1 objective, and that 1 objective, of course, is on the left-hand side. Meridian Sunhelm managed to secure that one for himself. Now, the one in the center of the battlefield, that one's a try, because we both only have 1 fighter. Sister Serial has Zephon the Impaler, and I have Tullius Virtus. Both of them are fighting each other for control of that 1 objective area, and since we both have the same number of fighters, I don't get that objective at all, and neither does she, so nothing happens there. On the far right hand side, however, Samus Stormsight is fighting both Malkaya the Corpse Maker as Rahab the Flayer over objective marker number 3. Now, both my fighters still alive defending the objective, but the rules state within Warcry that if more of your fighters occupy an objective point than your opponents, then that objective automatically becomes yours. So in this case, Sister Sarah has 2 fighters occupying objective number 3, so technically speaking, she gets that one. So technically speaking, Sister Sarah and I are both tied, both controlling 1 objective marker apiece. However, with the victory condition rules, if the attacker and the defender are tied by the end of round number 4, the victory automatically goes to the attacker. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, that takes directly to the end of the game, with the Splintered Fang earning a victory for themselves as well, and also winning the very first game for Sister Serial in a game of Warcry. She managed to secure the objectives on this one. And now that's because we're both tied, technically speaking, but according to the scenario rules, if there's a tie, the attacker always wins. In this case, Sister Serial was the attacker. She nets herself a victory. And this was a pretty hard-fought battle. I am not ashamed to lose this one because it was very, very tough to fight against her, especially with that Nurgle's Rot ability giving everyone +1 toughness. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go directly to the after action report because this battle report is now officially over.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
I thought about staying. They offered me the chance to lead them, to teach them, to be king.
Uh-huh.
But my place is here, so I swallowed the juice, said the words, and here I am.
Did you say the words right this time?
Well, maybe I didn't say every single tiny little syllable, no, but basically I said them, yeah. Basically.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, now it takes us directly to the after action report. This is the part of the battle report we talk about what went well, what went poorly, and what we can learn for the next time that we do battle. This is the after action report for Saga the 8 Points, battle report number 7, and this one ended up being a defeat for yours truly and a victory for Sister Serial on this one. For my losses, I lost both Horus as well as Tully, as well as Kato Shadowstep. My friend Sister Serial, she lost Tulok the Primus, Terrell, as well as the Whispering. So let's go and talk about some of the factors that led to my defeat. First of all, the reason why I lost is because Sister Serial is a really good player. This is an example of some massive playing by Sister Serial, and she was playing for the objectives. She secured 2 of the objectives near my deployment area by trying to outnumber my fighters located there, so that way she could secure those for herself as well. Another reason why this one I lost is because that Winds of Rot ability. That twist ability really helped out the Splinter Fang, giving them all their fighters toughness 5, which negated much of my hitting power against their attacks. Now, the Winds of Rot ability did help me out as well, giving me +1 to my toughness as well. However, because she had the poison weapons ability, it kind of negated that, so it kind of ended up being in her favor. And on that note, Venom Bloods with shields. Those characters who are armed with spears and shields are simply the illest. Those guys are toughness 5 base. They got 2 range attacks. If you give them the poison weapon ability, those guys are extremely deadly. I'm surprised that I think next time that Sister Serial actually fights against me, I think she plans on bringing more of those guys than anybody else, because that was insane to see the amount of damage those guys were able to pull off. And another thing about the Splinter Fang, their poisoned weapons ability is extremely deadly, allowing the Splinter Fangs to wound most of their opponents on a 3-up in most cases. And the reason why is because what it does, it actually gives their ability, that ability gives them +1 strength that beats your opponent's toughness. So against high toughness armies, like guys like Iron Fangs, Iron Jaws, as well as Stormcast Eternals, it's really going to really help them out kind of survive and actually beat their opponents because they get that additional 3 of attack against them. So because of that, I will always be wary of any double abilities that my opponents who play the Splintered Fang will ever bring out for the warbands, because they can really mess me up pretty bad. Now, the combination of both the Winds of Rot as well as the Poison the weapons ability gave the Splintered Fang against a Storm-like, a cast-like abilities as far as I'm concerned, because they had high toughness as well as high strength for their attacks, so it made it very, very difficult for me to fight against them. The only thing that actually was into my benefit was the fact that all these guys have pretty much low wounds. They usually have 10 wounds on average, maybe 15 for their elite choices, 20 for their leader, but for the most part though, they still have pretty low wounds. But like I said before, with the addition of that Winds of Rot ability as well as those poison weapons, it pretty much negated that concern for her. And like always, Sister Sarah is a great opponent to play against. I had a really fun time against it, and as always, I am looking forward to the rematch. So that's good to do for this one, you guys. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is invaluable to us as always. Also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blogger.com for all the latest and greatest hobby news on this channel. That's good to do for this one, you guys. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.